Welcome to the first episode of Armory, the show where we explore the lore behind an army's miniatures, with today's topic being the Nighthaunt from the Age of Sigmar universe. Hordes of horrifying spirits sent forth from the realm of Shyish to claim more souls for the dreaded god of death, Nagash. We won't cover him here though, as he technically isn't part of the Nighthaunt, but just as with the Soulblight Gravelords and the Osseck Bone Reapers, you can take him in your army if you want. Instead, let's start off with the real leader of the Nighthaunt, the Mortarch of Grief herself, Lady Olynder. In life, Olynder was a psychopathic gold digger, and I mean that very literally. She only craved power and wealth in her mortal life and would do anything to get them. From creating cunning schemes that would give Tommy Shelby a run for his money, to backstabbing more allies than Manfred von Karstein. Rivals too had a funny way of magically disappearing whenever they started to form a real threat to her reign. Her favorite MO, however, was abusing a little exploit called marriage. See, what she would do is she would go to a very powerful king and seduce him. Of course, soon after, these naive chaps would ask her to marry them, and she would wholeheartedly say yes. That was a grave mistake, however, as the second the vows were taken, family members would start to die under mysterious circumstances, until all rightful heirs and challengers to the throne had been taken out. This was then naturally followed by the tragic death of the king himself, which just happened to make Olynder the only heir to the throne. In order to reduce suspicion, Olynder would put on an elaborate show of grief, walking in silent marches through the fiefdom, with her face covered by a mourning veil. But like I said, this was all fake. In reality, she only wore the veil because she couldn't manage to hide her victorious smile as she looked upon these incredulous idiots who fell for her schemes. Around the time of her death, the Necroquake had just happened, which caused angry spirits to rise up all over the realms. Dangerous, but without a guiding hand, they weren't a potent enough army for Nagash's needs. Seeing potential in the cunning Lady Olynder, and sensing an opportunity to hand out some poetic justice, Nagash then cursed the soul of Olynder. The ruthless psychopath was turned into the Mortarch of Grief, forced to feel every negative emotion felt by the living beings in all of the mortal realms. This was actually pretty clever. Not only was Olynder now condemned to eternal suffering and sorrow for her crimes, she is also excellently motivated to lead the Nighthaunt on a crusade against the living, in a hope to finally make the pain stop. Ever the political spider, Olynder has set up shop in the ruins of her kingdom of Bathelloren. Here she and her handmaidens condone studies on the best way to spread fear and despair to the various races of the mortal realms. Sending out agents all over the realms to psychologically weaken the mortals to make it easier for the Nighthaunt forces to take them down. Not that she herself never enters the field of battle, however. On the contrary, her aura of grief is so potent that it makes plants wither, demons cower, and men drop dead. Satisfied with his new acquisition, the great necromancer still lacked a military leader, however. As for all her cunning schemes, Olynder always preferred the pen over the sword. An excellent candidate was found in the soul of Kurdos Valentian, however. In life, Kurdos only ever wanted one thing, to be king of his father's kingdom. In order to achieve this, he became one of the most ruthless army commanders ever known in the mortal realms, leading entire armies to their death in desperate quests for glory, pulling the most pyrrhic victories by sheer determination and military genius. No matter how hard he tried, however, this would never be enough, as his older brothers were favored to inherit the kingdom over him. So just like the biblical Cain, he struck down his brothers so that he might finally get the power he so desperately craved. Nagash once again sensed an excellent opportunity to combine pleasure with business and transformed poor Kurdos Valentian into the Craven King, a mute spirit that can only communicate with Lady Olynder and only about military strategy. He furthermore made him second in command of the Nighthaunt, so that he may forever be close to the position he desired without ever being able to attain it. Best of all, however, he plucked the souls of his murdered brothers from the abyss and turned them into a pair of heralds that follow the Craven King around, endlessly singing songs about his cowardly deeds and boasting about his failures. Those are the two main generals of the Nighthaunt hordes, but there are two other special agents you should know about, namely Alroth the Drowner and Ragnar the Grimhailer. Before his demise, Alroth was a ferryman, and a poor one at that, for his clients would never reach their destination. Rather than sailing them across the sea, Alroth would wait until they reached open waters and then whack his client with an oar, steal their possessions and dump them overboard, where they would die drowning. Eventually, his sins caught up to him, of course, and the locals gave Alroth a taste of his own medicine. Being rather impressed with the sheer amount of souls the Drowner had sent his way, Nagash offered the drowning Alroth a job, where he would continue sending souls through Nagash's domain. Alroth didn't need a lot of persuasion, and now his spectre sails the night sky on the search for interesting souls that can be turned into new recruits for the Nighthaunt. On the other side of the moral spectrum stood Ragnar. Before his transformation, he used to be a promising mage in charge of his own little kingdom. A student of both the deadly winds of Shaiish as well as the orderly light magic of Hayesh, Ragnar believed he would eventually be able to control death himself. It was a noble goal, for sure, as he sought to grant eternal life to all of his people. Nagash, however, learned of this boastful mage, who claimed that he could beat the great necromancer himself, and decided to pay him a visit. In person. I don't think I need to explain to you how that altercation went. Ragnar nowadays has been cursed to forever hunt anyone foolish enough to try something similar, and every blasphemy against the Lord of Death risks a visit from the Grim Hailer. In other words, he's Nagash's one-man inquisition. With the generals out of the way, let's take a look at the lieutenants of the Nighthaunt, the Knights of Shroud. When faced with an army of the undead, most cities really don't stand any chance of defeating them. They tend to come in overwhelming numbers, can easily pass through any defenses, and they are generally speaking immune to conventional weaponry. Only if the attacked has enough conviction and faith in his heart will the attack connect, but it's rather hard to maintain morale in the face of such hordes. Therefore it may come as no surprise to you that some generals are tempted to strike a deal with the devil. After betraying their city, they are given immortality of sorts, and are turned into a Knight of Shrouds, basically the everyday leaders of the Nighthaunt forces. However, this really is a curse in disguise, because like most other Nighthaunt, only the pain of the living can provide them with a modicum of warmth to give them a break from the eternal cold and self-hatred. Frequently accompanying them are Dreadblade Harrows, which are formed out of the retainers of this general, who stood by silently as their liege betrayed his vows in their city. Nagash in turn removed all parts of their souls except for the one rotten sliver that prevented them from speaking out against the breaking of their vows. As a result, the Dreadblade Harrows revel in committing the most gruesome acts in the name of their king. These wicked riders appear out of the mist to run down fleeing soldiers or cut down unsuspecting villagers. And when their heinous acts have been fulfilled, they disintegrate once more, leaving nothing behind but cruel laughter on the winds. Even crueler, however, are the cruel gas cruciators, ethereal horror specializing in the torture of the soul. It is not uncommon for criminals to end up on the torture racks, but usually they give up their secrets and get mercifully executed. However, in the rare occasion that they never give up their secrets, and thus die a horrifying death as they finally succumb to the numerous wounds their torturers left upon them, a Kurdos Cruciator is born. As the agony of their death leaves behind a spirit of pure condensed sadism, Nagash in his infinite wisdom quickly found use for these souls amongst the Nighthaunt forces. As they are nourished by the negative emotions, these imperial torturers can excruciate from the souls of the slain. In a way, these nightmarish creatures form a darker counterpart to the Guardians of Souls, who reinvigorate the dead with their magical lanterns. In life, these spirits dabbled in necromancy, but they were smart enough to realize it would eventually lead to their damnation. In return, Nagash grants them a rather peaceful role, and imbues them with an excessive amount of the magic they once pursued. They are to walk amongst the Nighthaunt, feeding them and guiding the lesser spirits who are drawn to their magical auras, as moths are drawn to a flame. Riot Games has often borrowed ideas from Warhammer, and Games Workshop has decided to repay them in kind by creating the Spirit Torment. These guys are literally trash from League of Legends. Cruel jailers who travel the lands, claiming souls to lock away in their padlock. Jokes aside, these beings serve two purposes for Nagash. Foremost, they are created to hunt down the souls that try to escape their judgment, whether they are trying to avoid punishment for a particular transgression, or whether they have been claimed by another god is irrelevant. All souls belong to Nagash, and Spirit Torments plan to keep it that way, by even claiming Stormcast souls before they can return to Azir. As an added bonus, however, these tormentors also share the cruel personality of Trash, as they like nothing more than toying with the souls locked in their padlock. This creates an aura of suffering that feeds the surrounding Nighthaunts, similar to the flames of the Soul Guardians. Following these spirit torments are creatures known as chain gas. In life, these poor chaps were captives that prayed to the wrong gods for release. Forgetting to offer the Lord of Death their worship, the jealous Bone King has remade them into chain gas. These creatures are magically enslaved to their respective spirit torment, but maintain just enough self-awareness to constantly yearn for freedom. Of course, this is also to the endless amusement of their spirit torment masters, who are just as much of a dick as Nagash himself. A similarly cruel fate is reserved for tomb banshees. Born only after the greatest betrayal, these miserable apparitions are forced to experience the pain of the proverbial knife in their back for all of eternity. But the fun doesn't just stop there, however, as Nagash has found ways to magnify their pain 100-fold. This causes them so much anguish that their screams have gained the ability to kill. These are probably the saddest of all of the Nighthaunt, chosen not even because of their actions, but just because they can be turned into such potent shock troops. Another apparition of note is a Cairn Wraith. In life, these creatures were prolific serial killers, and after getting away with their countless crimes, even death has struggled to get a grasp on them. Upon death, these bastards decided they weren't done sporting yet, and willed themselves back into the realms as ghastly reapers who hunt down mortals just for the fun of it. In the end, Nagash still got the last laugh, however, as he created a massive necromantic ritual known as the Great Karnach, which single-handedly slaved every Karnray to his will. Needless to say, these killing machines form an excellent addition to every undead warhost. A similar bloodlust can be found in the Lord Executioners. Headsmen in life, these killers enjoyed their profession a bit too much, and while they technically acted on the right side of the law, to them it was more about the magical sensation of ending another's life. Appreciative of their attitude, the Undying King has stripped away the facade and turned them into headhunting spirits left to kill as much as they want. There's one catch, however. If during their lifetime they knowingly slayed innocent lives, these spirits are sent back to haunt them. Being magically bound to their executioner, they are free to torment their executioner for all eternity. The final elite spirit of the Nighthaunt Armory is the Scriptor Mortis. These undead scribes do not focus their efforts on warfare, but instead work to spread Nagash's influence via political means. These propagandists write great stories about the heroes of death, with Nagash of course being the grandest of them all, creating great volumes about the continual victories and conquests of the Nighthaunt processions. Sometimes, however, a certain problematic individual does not fit rightly within their tales, and thus the scandal must be snuffed out. In this case, they will seek out the mortal's true name, and write it down in their own personal death note, causing the mortal to drop dead without requiring a single sword stroke. And just like Light Yagami, they of course greatly appreciate the fact that this leaves no evidence. We don't want people to think badly of good old Elder Bones, eh? With all the rare ghosts covered, let's now take a look at the unending masses of various spooks that make up the bulk of their forces. Starting with the lowliest of spirits, in the spirit hosts. Spirit hosts are basically balls of ghost soup, weak souls stripped of all their personalities, bound together into one big deadly spook ball. These things are more akin to elemental beings than true ghosts, as they lack any real form of sentience or personality. Instead, these ectoplasmic blobs are instinctively searching for the warmth of the living, with the Guardians of Souls nourishing them in between campaigns. As a side note, by the way, these models look dope, but they are an incredible pain in the ass to work with, so I highly recommend just kit bashing them out of leftover bits and green stuff. The bulk of the Nighthaunt forces on the tabletop, however, will not be made up out of these blobs, but rather out of chain rasps. The chain rasp hordes consist out of criminals who are locked up for life. Foolishly, they believe that death would finally free them of their captivity, but Nagash had other ideas. Like most other ghosts on this list, Nagash does a little trolling, as he magically recreates the bounds in which they died, so a criminal who died in chains will forever have to carry around those same chains as a ghost. Just pray to God that you don't die in a stockade in Age of Sigmar. Nagash pulls a similar prank on the healers of the mortal realms to create Dreadside Harridans. See, Nagash doesn't like doctors one bit, because they basically blueball him as a profession. Whenever someone dies, Nagash gets their soul, and thus you can imagine the little excitement he gets every time someone passes away. These healers, however, keep on pulling people back from the brink of death, removing them from the clutches of the great necromancer. So when they themselves eventually die, a gruesome punishment awaits them. Nagash strips away all of their free will and turns them into killing machines that viciously chop the living apart. But worst of all, these medics are still fully sentient. For their transgressions, they will have to spend the rest of their life watching themselves tear apart the living they spend so much time taking care of. Wow, that was depressing. Now let's take a look at a more positive backstory. What? They don't exist? Oh, okay then. Blade Guy's revenants are souls locked in a perpetual state of panic. While dying in a particularly horrible fashion, such as being buried alive, or drowning because some random ferryman decided to kick you off his ship, these mortals experience a state of such panic that they spend their last moments thrashing around with all their strength in a hysterical attempt to survive. Once again, Nagash smelled an opportunity and cursed these revenants to be forever locked in this state. After being given a big sword, these chaps now act as frantic blade furies, hacking away at anything they see, believing everyone in their vicinity to be the reason for their oppressive emotions. Luckily for Nagash, the Nighthaunt aren't corporeal, otherwise the amount of friendly fire would be nothing to scoff at. Before you move on to some more elite infantry, there's still one last piece of chaff to discuss, in the form of Grimghast Reapers. The origins of Grimghasts can range from cunning spy masters to poison brewing assassins, all of them having one thing in common, in that they treated murder as an art, playing every little detail and making sure that no one would ever be able to discover their deed. In that, Nagash has made them into the polar opposite, as Grimghast Reapers rush over the battlefield, wildly hacking apart any and all who come in reach of their slashing scythes. in a way mocking their murderous craft by the sheer crudeness of their methods. In order to maximize their indiscrimination, Nagash has even blindfolded them, so they can no longer even appreciate their own kills. These are roughly guided in the right direction by an extoller. Extollers are forced to act as simps for Nagash, forever singing praiseful songs and telling boastful tales. Naturally, extollers are completely made up out of the worst critics of Nagash, who are forced to swallow their words after being sent to Shyish. Now onto the smaller kids with Mirmorn Banshees. Originally, sorcerers on a quest for magical scrolls and artifacts, Nagash decided that something so trivial as that shouldn't stop them from doing so, just with one caveat as Nagash stripped them of every other emotion, leaving them as empty husks with an unsatiable thirst for magic. See, these mortals handled the winds of Shyish without performing the required rituals, a grave offense to the great necromancer, which of course cannot be left unpunished. More deserving of their fate, however, is the Craven Throne Guard. In life, these crossbow-toting gangsters were the personal assassins of Kurdos Valentian, and plenty of his political rivals were found in alleyways with a crossbow bolt in their back. Similar to Kurdos, these craven killers, who made sure their prey never saw them coming, got cursed to eternal servitude. Not that Kurdos is very appreciative of his resurrected bodyguard, however. See, after losing his speech and glory, the one thing Kurdos still found enjoyable was bonking people's head in with his mace, a way to relieve his frustration, so to speak. The Craven Throne have become part of an elaborate prank in a sense, as they make sure to shoot every enemy before they can get close to their former employer, removing even this final pleasure from his own life. Then the final member of the infantry we should talk about are the Glaivrate Stalkers. In life, the Stalkers were huntsmen who lived for the thrill of the hunt. Nothing brought them more joy than riding down their prey to deliver the final blow, and well, it turns out that even death can stop them from pursuing their favorite pastime. Glaivrate Stalkers are basically the Nighthaunt equivalent of John Wick. Their master gives them a name and they will hunt them down, no matter how long it takes or how well their prey tries to hide. The raids will keep on hunting with their glaives eternally pointing at their victim's heart. In other words, if they come from you, you are royally fucked. Having talked about the guys with the equine heads, let's go to the actual horse riders next. Hexrays are the dedicated cavalry of the Nighthaunt, wielding magical scythes that can immolate someone's soul with a single strike. Yup, those little embers you see in the models are the spiritual remains of their foes still smoldering away. Pretty metal, right? The same can be said about their lore, however, as no one even bothered to come up with a cool backstory or noteworthy piece of fluff. The only thing that stands out is that in the 3rd edition battle tome they are accused of bestiality with their horses. Yeah, what can I say, the 3rd edition tome leaves some things to be desired. The final unit of the Nighthaunt forces, and also one of the most gorgeous models in all of Warhammer, is the Black Coach. The most powerful of the Deadlord's servants can be reborn again, even after the physical bodies are all but destroyed. In order to do so, however, they are placed in the scariest baby carrier to ever be invented. The job of these ghostly carriages is to ride the remains of the deceased through sights of combat, so that they can feed on the spirits, the blood and the suffering unleashed by all of the slaughter. Driven by a Cairn Wraith and followed by a procession of ghosts who carry the corpse's possessions, these ghastly reincarnations of Santa Claus will keep on driving until their cargo is finally strong enough to return from the dead. Now I'm also wondering whether Arkan is currently in one of those? Oh well, maybe the Ostjek Battle Tome will answer that question. Anyway, that was the last of the Nighthaunt, and thus we have arrived at the end of the video. If you enjoyed this video, please let me know in the comments. But also if you didn't like it, then please let me know what you would like to see different. I'm doing a bit of an experiment here, so feedback is greatly appreciated. Regardless, that's all I got for you today. Have a nice day, and don't forget your daily prayers to the ruinous powers.